What's good, Seattle hockey fans? Erica L. Ayala bringing you another episode of Locked On Kraken, where we are going to talk about a strange trade rumor that includes my top candidate for the next Seattle Kraken captain. We're also going to give you some updates on some Seattle Kraken players that have hit the ice in the last handful of weeks between BioSteel Camp, NHL PA camp, and of course, captain's practices and the like. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
What's cracking, Seattle hockey fans? Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you, your favorite teams every single day. And of course, your favorite NHL team is the Seattle Kraken. So let's get cracking. Yes, we're going to talk about a trade rumor that I saw come across my Locked On Kraken email. But before we do that, I want to make sure that you know today's episode brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. You'll enter promo code LockedOnNHL, and that will get you a free water bottle with any Bird Dogs order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise. All right. So what is this rumor? If you listened to the episode earlier in the week, I gave you two criteria that I think we should carry for captain. And of course, I made my case for Jordan Eberle, who actually did not meet all two of the criteria. So make sure you listen to Monday's episode. You can check out on your audio platform or on YouTube. Hi, YouTubers, and check that out. Yes, I am bling ringing again. Yes, indeed. Okay, so I talked about Eberle. If you're an everydayer, an OGer, you know I think pretty highly of Eberle. And then I do like the little alerts. So I get Kraken news directly in my inbox. And I'll have some more later this week on how you can get text messages with the latest Kraken news. But that's coming up later in the week. But I get these email alerts on Seattle Kraken news. And to my surprise, I got an email that sent me an article that talked about the Edmonton Oilers and a potential trade for a Seattle Kraken defenseman. Now, first of all, trade rumors I'm always kind of a little meh about. But look at this. NHL trade rumors. Edmonton Oilers' next big signing may be a $27.5 million Seattle Kraken defenseman. All right, that's the article. That's the title. But then who's the picture? That's Jordan Eberle. And I could be wrong. I am pretty sure I'm not. But Eberle's not a defenseman. So I'm giving you this trade rumor because I think it's interesting, and I'm going to break down some of the nuggets that I thought were interesting in this article. But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speculate. Sometimes people make a mistake. I've misappropriated or labeled someone as a defenseman when they were forward and vice versa. It happens. I think when you're doing a trade rumor article, you got to dot your I's, cross your T's. But okay, so let's just overlook that for a moment. But again, Jordan Eberle has never played defense for the Seattle Kraken. I'll just put it that way. But he has played for the Edmonton Oilers. And that is the argument that, of course, this article is making. They talk about how he's 34 years old, an intriguing option. He has consistently performed well, achieving back-to-back 20 goal seasons with the Kraken. And that's where let's take a look at, oh, look at that right winger, the right winger for this Seattle Kraken, Eberle. Yes. So you see that he was a 22nd overall pick. 22 is one of my favorite numbers, in the first round in the 2008 draft. And he is almost a tourist, which, I mean, he's a May baby, so I'll give him that. Almost a tourist. But you can see his numbers in the playoffs. Career playoff games played 76, 19 goals, 28 assists, 47 points overall. And this is a new look, in case, I know a lot of you know I come to NHL.com a lot. New look for NHL.com. Still getting used to it. So this is what he did for us last season per the article. 2022-23, 20 goal season, 43 assists, 63 points in 82 games. He's at 940 games played career-wise. We talked about some Seattle Kraken milestones that are coming up, including Eberle. You can see 282 goals, 376 assists. So Eberle is a player, as you'll see, and we have his career stats here. You can see all the years that he played for the Edmonton Oilers. A lot of people believe that his breakout season with the Oilers was that 2011-12 season, 78 games played. He had 76 points overall. And as you can see, that's, those are the top marks, even with the Seattle Kraken. So there's more in the tank, possibly. And that's kind of what this article is questioning, especially, and I thought this was interesting, is given some of the comments that we had on our Monday episode. The article posits that if the Seattle Kraken cannot perform the way they did this past season, that they might want to move younger, and that Eberle might be the type of player that they could get good market value for. And, I think that's really interesting. Again, some faux pas perhaps in the article, but there was a comment from one of our everydayers, someone who makes Locked on Kraken their daily destination, and Striatic kind of saying that, wants to sell that the Seattle Kraken will be a 100-point team. That was our question of the day. And if you missed it on Monday, spoiler alert, but go listen to that episode and I make my case. I'm buying it. I do think the Seattle Kraken are going to perform better than they did last season. Now, I will be honest, and I've been kind of talking about this in the last handful of weeks, months, however you want to determine it. But I'm a little bit worried about where the offense is going to come from. But I also said that last year, which makes this season, if we're being honest, a little bit of a toss-up. I don't know what consistency looks like for the Seattle Kraken. Not yet. Not in goaltending, not in defense, not in offense, not in individual performances. So I'm kind of putting my faith, I'm holding fast. I'm staying true that the Seattle Kraken can utilize last year as a foundational piece and build from there. But if they don't, if we get like a sophomore slump, so to speak, it's not really our sophomore year, it's our junior year. Let's say we are a redshirted freshman, so it's our sophomore year. Are we going to go into a sophomore skid, a sophomore slump? And could that render someone like Eberle vulnerable? So then, of course, I want to know where Eberle is in his Seattle Kraken contract. And for that, of course, we go to our friends, Cap Friendly. I'm going to put this full screen if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, no worries. I will walk you through it. Jordan Eberle at the top of this list. He's one of those alternate captains that I talked about on Monday's episode. But so we have him locked in at 5.5 for the 2023-24 season. And then he's a free agent next year. So what does this mean? Well, if the Seattle Kraken are not going to extend him, and remember, we've talked about players that we think the Seattle Kraken should extend. We talked about that a little bit. We actually should probably go back to that. So this article, while again, some of the facts may have been false, It just piqued a lot of things for me, thinking about Eberle as a UFA after this season. What if we have a sophomore skid? All of these things that now I'm thinking about because of this article. And, he's a UFA. He's a UFA along with Alexander Wenberg and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who we'll talk about a little bit later on the show. As far as forwards, for defensemen, the Seattle Kraken as UFAs going into next season as of right now, Chris Driedger is one of those. Not a defenseman. He's a goalie, excuse me. Jacob Megna, Justin Schultz, who I talked about a couple of days ago last week, is also a UFA in 24-25. So we don't have too many UFAs in 24-25. We do have a bunch of RFAs, restricted free agents. That includes, we've got Kyler Yamamoto, Ellie Tolvanen, Maddie Beniers, Cole Lind, and those are, they're all forwards. And so out of this bunch, based on what we've seen just last season, I think we keep Eberle. I think we keep Tolvanen. We keep Beniers, of course. And I like Schultz. I like Justin Schultz. I talked about that last week. I do like Justin Schultz. I think Chris Driedger, I've been kind of saying it, and we might know this season if the writing is on the wall with Chris Driedger. So we'll see. Let me toggle back just so you can kind of take a look as well if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, no worries. Again, I'll talk you through it. But what I'm looking at now is cap friendly. And again, out of these players who are UFAs or RFAs, who do we think is most likely to return? I do put Eberle in that category. Eberle, a UFA. Again, Wenberg, a UFA. Yamamoto, I don't really know what to say about him. He'll be an RFA next year, but I haven't really seen anything from him, so I'm not going to make a determination right now. Ellie Tolvanen, I've liked what I've seen from Ellie Tolvanen, so based on last season, I'll say yes. Maddie Beniers, abso-freaking-lutely. They want this guy in the organization long term. Cole Lind, I'm thinking no. Pierre-Edouard, again, don't know him, so I'm going to skip right now. A UFA, Justin Schultz, again, talked about that last week. Jacob Megna, not seeing it. I don't know what the future holds, but wouldn't be surprised if that's not an option that the Seattle Kraken pick up. He's a UFA. And then Chris Driedger, again, I kind of feel the writing is going to be on the wall. If Chris Driedger can make a bounce back, that would be fantastic. If he can't, though, had a wishy-washy first season, but again, so did Philip Grubauer. And at times, I kind of, at least you knew what you were going to get with Driedger. Philip Grubauer, very unpredictable in season 1. He was hurt in season 2, obviously, so was Chris Driedger. But let's be honest, Philip Grubauer gave us a fantastic performance in the playoffs. So what does that mean now? A lot riding on this season for Philip Grubauer as far as I'm concerned. But again, he's not a UFA until 27-28. So I'm inclined to believe that they're going to want to make it work with Philip Grubauer. Driedger and Joey Decord, we'll see. But goaltending, still a question mark as far as I'm concerned. So Eberle rumor, trade rumor. Are you buying it? I'm thinking no. I'm thinking unless the Seattle Kraken are absolutely bombing at the trade deadline, which even then, I'm not sure I'm really buying it. But I'm going to say no. I'm passing on this trade rumor. I don't like it. I don't think it's going to happen. And also, Eberle is not a defenseman. But it did give me some fuel on things to talk about in the next segment. And what of that second-year slip? Should we be worried about that? Is it something that is going to plague this Seattle Kraken team? I'm going to talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. As I mentioned at the top of the show, today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Now listen, Bird dogs is something at first just kind of given, um, I've said it before. I just felt like it was more catered toward the men folks. So I really couldn't see myself like as a part of the brand identity. And then I got my first box of bird dogs, the shorts. Huge fan. They are truly uh, slimming in the thigh area, which for me, I love. It's a fit or slim through the thigh. They give you the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. I've never tried Lululemon, but I'm going to go with Bird Dogs on this. I think they would know. They also sent me the pants, this last box. Oh my gaga. I never really got into the Lululemon phase, like I said, but those Bird Dogs, if Lululemon fits like that, I mean, I don't know. Again, the Lululemon I'm familiar with. Bird Dogs, wasn't really sure it was going to be my vibe, but the fit is undeniable. I can tell you that for sure. Also, Bird Dogs use an anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Super helpful in the Tulsa heat. Bird dogs are functional for any occasion. You can go golfing, you can go on a date, you can even go to the pool. I've been to the beach in mine. The shorts are great for the beach. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, or you can use promo code lockedonnhl when you're on the Bird Dogs website, and that will get you a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. And again, thank you for making Locked On Kraken your daily destination. All right. In the first segment, we talked about a rumor about a defenseman. I'm using air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube, but a defenseman named Jordan Eberle, who might be in the trade rumor mill for a trade between the Seattle Kraken and the Edmonton Oilers. I don't even think it's worth right now talking about what we would even get from the Oilers in return, because I'm saying no. If I'm Ronnie Francis and company, I'm saying no to this trade. That being said, and we talked about in the first segment that, hey, he's a UFA upcoming, as well as some other players, including Tolvanen, Beniers, and for my money, Schultz. Schwartzy we'll talk about another time, but Justin Schultz. And I think you got to find a way to keep those guys based on last year's performance. But as I mentioned in the first segment, we don't know what consistency looks like for the Seattle Kraken. Let's just be honest. I mean, come on, OGers, everydayers, you know this. I was pulling my hair out early in the season because we saw a product, we saw a vision, we saw a plan in preseason, and that did not come to pass early in the regular season. It took a while. And of course, Martin Jones kind of saved our hide when we really were without Grubauer and Drieger for that matter. So what does consistency look like for the Seattle Kraken? Are we going to face a sophomore slump? And I know it's our third season. But like I said in the earlier segment, let's just call season 1 our redshirt year. So yeah, we're sophomores this year. For those maybe not familiar with the NCAA, if you're a redshirt, you were with the team technically, or maybe at the college or university. But if you are an athlete, you were not playing for one reason or another. Olympians, more so on the women's hockey side, will redshirt so that they are still technically enrolled at their university, but they're away from the team so they don't lose that eligibility while they're away from their college team. Anyway, so what are we going to get? What are we going to get from Eberle? What are we going to get from some other guys who are big performers? Jared McCann, Vince Dunn. We saw Adam Larson really step up and play an important role. I'm really not worried about his consistency, if I'm being honest. Will Borgen, we saw step up. Ty Cartier, who we'll talk about a little bit in the next segment as well. But what are we going to get? how do we know what consistency looks like? I don't even think, a lot of people think Yanni Gourde is the shoe-in for captain. Again, we talked about that earlier this week. Yanni Gourde was not consistent. Brandon Tanev was definitely not consistent. Now, how much slack do you give Tanev because he was coming off of an injury? But what does consistency look like? And I've said it time and time and time again. But one of our most consistent lines, some of our more consistent individual players are no longer on the team. And that was those fourth line guys holding it down. Ryan Donato, Daniel Sprong, Morgan Geekie. So not only do you eviscerate our fourth line from last year, but what about the consistency? Our fourth line, they were booning the offense for a really long time. Why? Because, Tolvanen came late. Bjorkstrand took a while. Andre Burakovsky was doing his thing. And then what happened? He got hurt. Schultz wasn't stepping up. Even Eberle, who I love, wasn't stepping up consistently. I think, and I said it before, who was that guy for me last year? I know you're probably saying it out loud. Everydayers, you're saying it out loud. Who did I say was that guy? Matty Beniers. That's right. Matty Beniers, one of our most consistent players early on. Is that going to be the case when, he's what you would consider maybe like a true sophomore season? He played 10 games in that first go round, but like really going to have a full NHL season under his belt. And of course, the concern is, how is he going to adapt to now teams effectively scouting him? What did we see Colorado and Dallas do in the playoffs? They got physical with Matty Beniers and with Jared McCann. We're not an enforcer type team. And although I do like that kind of hockey, also, Carson Soucy, gone. I mean, Alexiak we still have. So, there's that. But, what are we? We don't have someone that's going to, quote unquote, enforce the game for us. Not really. I kind of want to move away from that kind of hockey, but I do understand that sometimes things are not, I'll put it this way. Players sometimes want to take the game into their command if they feel that it's not being officiated properly. And yeah, that's just sports. Sometimes you need folks that are going to go muck it up. Piss and vinegar, sandpaper. I like the sandpaper. So I don't know. What do we have enough of those guys with our newcomers that are going to be able to effectively, whether it's in a more brute force kind of way or more in an intellectual, I'm going to, crash the net and make you pay kind of way, how are we protecting our players like Beniers, like McCann? Because I think that we saw a few times last year. Oh, what was it? Vancouver. Oh, gosh. Vancouver threw us around like rag dolls last year, and it pissed me off. I was so ticked off last year. Where's the consistency coming from? And I don't think that's something we can answer right now, right? We've got to get a couple of weeks into September when we're at training camp, then deeper into September when we're in preseason, and then quite honestly, really through November, maybe even December, to figure out what is the consistency. What is the true identity of this team? I think we saw them start to lay the foundation, but now we've got to make sure the cement has dried, right? Without any chips, without any handprints or, signatures. No one has ruined the integrity of our foundation. What are we going to be? I don't know. So yeah, that second year slip, is it a concern? My mind didn't immediately go there. I do believe in the will of this team. If nothing else, I believe in the will from the front office all the way to the support staff that engages with the players every single day. I believe in our will. I believe in our fight. And that's really what we saw in the playoffs. We also saw in the playoffs fatigue. We saw that throughout the regular season. That's something, as you know, I want us to work on. So we're going to talk about this more, but coming up next, we're going to close the show out quickly, just mentioning a few of the camps and ice time. Starting to see some of the Seattle Kraken players, old and new, hit the ice. That's coming up on Locked On Kraken. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily routine, one of your daily destinations, or at least 3 times a week right now. When we get to about mid-September, you'll start to see us go more on the Monday to Friday schedule, so stay tuned for that. And make sure you tune in for Friday's episode, because I'm going to introduce a way that you can get more Locked On Kraken content directly to your mobile device, or wherever you get text messages. So that's coming up later this week. Kraken on ice. No, that's not a ice performance of sorts. Well, at least not a figure skating performance. But we have seen some Seattle Kraken players, including a broadcaster and a broadcaster's spouse on ice. And that's with some of the rec leagues. JT and Piper Shaw's husband, I believe, won some hardware, right? Playing at Kraken Community Iceplex. So congratulations to them. But we've also seen the BioSteel camp. I believe it was Alexiak was at that camp. Maybe somebody else, I'm forgetting, but definitely Jamie Alexiak at that camp. Then we have the NHL Players Association camp. Ty Cartier I saw there. And the Seattle Kraken have started to come to Kraken Community Iceplex. Now, these are not quote unquote official practices. A lot of people will call them captain's practices, or just folks kind of working out. It's that time of year. People are getting back into market, and they're starting to hit the ice. Pierre-Edouard we saw on the ice. We saw Yamamoto on the ice. We saw, a few other guys that were hitting the ice, including we got some numbers. So we saw that Pierre-Edouard will wear number 41. And then I believe it's, so we saw Brian Dumoulin and Yamamoto on the ice. I think it's Dumoulin, though, that's wearing number 8. I don't know where my handy dandy notebook is right now, so I apologize. But so we saw some guys hit the ice. And that just, to me, signals that we are inching ever so close to training camp, a training camp that I believe is going to be one of the most important, if certainly the most important, that we've ever had in Seattle Kraken history. And that's coming up. I'm really going to be asking, because I haven't finalized my plans, waiting on a few things, but I plan to be asking Dave Haxtell a lot about conditioning in training camp, because I do think fitness and fatigue was a problem for the Seattle Kraken down the stretch, but we're going to leave it there. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got some Firebirds updates that we're going to save for Friday. As I mentioned, make sure you're tuning in on Friday, because there is a way that you can engage directly with Locked On Kraken, aka with me. Direct text messages, something that the Locked On Network is doing. And now we have the capabilities on Locked On Kraken. It's going to be a fantastic way to support the show and to support me getting out to training camp, preseason, and games along the way this 2023-2024 season. Be kind to yourselves and to each other. Hold fast, stay true, get fired up. And I will catch you on the next episode of Locked On Kraken. Peace.